Hello, Weekend Warriors. Welcome to the Weekend Dojo with Ace Red and El Chizo Reviews. Tonight we are talking about 80s arcade games under the platforms of Atari, Nintendo, and Namco. Take it away, El Chizo.
Thanks, Ace. So I wanted to start off first by just talking about a game that most gamers are familiar with, but not all of them, not at least not the ones getting into the whole history of gaming thing, know about. Many of us recognize the original Donkey Kong game when we see it in an arcade. You see Mario running up these girders. I guess they're girders. They could be girders, I-beams, whatever you want to call them, jumping barrels and fires and trying to rescue Pauline, his girlfriend, from Donkey Kong. But it wasn't going to be that originally. It was actually going to be a Popeye game, and the character of Donkey Kong was actually going to be Bluto.
You're serious?
Yep, and Pauline was actually supposed to be Olive Oyl.
Well, I'll be right back. I'm being called. Continue going on.
Yep, so going into it, I believe they lost the license to use Popeye's imagery. So at the last minute, they took the code that they programmed and applied new skins to it, essentially. Ooh, I'm a little tired. I would say that this is probably where Nintendo really caught on to what it had to be. This was the point where they thought, hey, we've got something here, let's roll with it. And that is what I believe inspired them to create, Donkey Kong 2, Donkey Kong Jr., etc., etc. But then they started branching off, and you got the Super Mario Brothers, who were plumbers originally, in their after, because the original Mario was a carpenter. Then there were the Mario Brothers, who were plumbers, taking out crabs and turtles and whatnot from the sewers. And that was a fun enough game. You've probably played that level on Smash Brothers Brawl with the POW block. Which, by the way, did get carried over into Super Mario Brothers 2. We'll talk about that in a minute. Super Mario Brothers 1 was a pack-in game, as many of you know, and it was really, its whole purpose was to show off what the NES could do. And I think they did that very well. You got a good feel for how the momentum of the NES, or how the NES could handle its own physics. It gave you a wide range of colors to choose from. And it was a very easy to understand game. It taught you how to play it while you played it. And that's probably what kept instruction booklets from tutorials from catching on for so long, is that the game just taught you how to play it. There were fewer buttons on the controller, so there was only so many combinations you could try. Nowadays, we do kind of need a tutorial, because in order to make the games more in-depth and interactive, there has to be more buttons and controls on your... I have been yawning all night. There has to be more buttons on your controller. It just has to be, because we're used to... I don't want to say a higher quality of game. I want to say a more in-depth control of a game. You want more range of movement. You want a bigger world to explore. You want to explore in 3 dimensions. You want to be able to perform multiple actions throughout this world that has been presented to you. So you need more buttons on your controller, which means that you're going to need to be taught how that game uses those controls. Then moving on, we've got Super Mario Bros. 2 in Japan, which was really just remixed levels that were more difficult and introduced a power down.
I'm correcting something.
By introducing the poison mushroom, which was the first item that could actually harm Mario. Then they reskinned Doki Doki Panic into Super Mario Bros. 2, bringing back that POW block that we saw in Super Mario Bros. Now, this would go on into the 90s with the Super Nintendo. I am overtired. And at the same time, Rareware would actually split off and take the Donkey Kong franchise and create Donkey Kong Country. Of course, this was only a Nintendo. There was one other company that actually utilized the original Donkey Kong game for a home console, the Atari 2600. And it was what you would have to expect. It didn't have the best graphics compared to what you would get in an arcade. However, the Atari controller really facilitated the controls because Mario really didn't do anything more than run and jump. And speaking of Atari and arcades, there is one game that I kind of want to go into, Pac-Man. Now, everyone knows Pac-Man. I don't care who you are. I don't care where you live. Everyone recognizes Pac-Man. And this was like the first, I think, multi-platform craze.
I'm back.
Was Pac-Man. Owned by Namco, Pac-Man started its life in the arcades. It was actually supposed to be a girls' game. That's why the ghosts are all so cute and whatnot. Or at least that's what the creator of Pac-Man said, is that the ghosts were supposed to be cute looking to appeal to females who wanted to get into gaming. Of course, Pac-Man, being with its low effort, high reward play style, attracted more than just women. It attracted everyone. You could say it started a Pac-Man fever.
Nice pun. Speaking of
not pun.
Did you know that there's this one guy, I think he's under My Crazy Obsessions, whatever, who's absolutely obsessed with Pac-Man. He still hasn't beaten the high score yet, but he's dedicated his whole entire life to Pac-Man.
Pac-Man's a fun game, dude.
It is. Do you know what the highest score on Pac-Man is? I'm actually curious. Entertainment Warehouse, we are talking about retro arcade games tonight.
The highest score, well, people have gotten the highest score before. It's a combination of all the ghosts that you could possibly eat in a level without running out of time, eating as many fruit as you can before eating the last pellet.
3,333,360 points.
That sounds about right.
Yeah. To achieve the maximum score.
No, I've never gotten anywhere near that.
Me neither. I can never get past level 2.
I can get as far as board 5.
Impressive.
Actually, Pac-Man Jr. and Miss Pac-Man I'm better at.
I'm better at Miss Pac-Man. And the 3D one.
Yeah, Pac-Man World.
I think it's Pac-Mania.
Yeah, Pac-Mania is 3D, I believe. Or it's forced perspective 3D.
Yes. Pac-Man is the one.
Pac-Man existed on both Atari and Nintendo consoles in a couple different forms. With Atari, it was just the one cartridge. On Nintendo, there were a couple different versions. There was the Nintendo licensed version, there was the Tengen Gray cartridge version and the Tengen Black cartridge version. Tengen, whatever.
What are the differences in these versions?
Not much, really. There's a bit of a graphic difference between the two Tengen variants and the Nintendo one, meaning the two Tengen variants look relatively the same, but not exactly the same. That's a stretch because there's really not a lot of variation in play.
Okay.
The two Tengen versions, really, it just has to do with Tengen originally produced it with a gray cartridge, but they had to buy those from Nintendo, and they were tired of doing it, so they decided to make their own.
All right, that makes sense.
That raised a whole stink that I've talked about before.
Mm-hmm. Have you covered Donkey Kong yet?
Yes, I went over that pretty quickly up.
All right. Now, I would like to get into the deeper Nintendo world of like Mario characters of the 80s. Or Mario games, I mean.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. So, after the success of Donkey Kong, Mario sort of spawned into his own game called Super Mario Bros. And it was a basic concept. You went through levels, and the whole goal was to save the princess, or Princess Peach. Now, I don't remember how it happened, but there was a special thing where how Luigi was created was it was a green sprite of Mario. Did they confirm that that was Luigi at the time, or was that originally just a green Mario?
Originally, it was just a color palette swap of Mario.
Okay, so it wasn't meant to be its own character originally.
No,
right?
It was just green Mario.
Okay. But I'm looking at the release dates just so I get my facts right here. 80s Mario games. I'm sorry, it's taking me a bit. Overall, Mario is just a fun jumper or platformer. All right, so what games we had here was Mario Bros, Super Mario Bros. Turns out Mario Bros is actually the first one. And in this one, let's see here. I think I know which one this is. Wasn't the first Mario Bros game that had and it had just Mario you played Mario and Luigi and you went through pipes and it was the whole thing was in a black background with pipes and Koopas.
Well, they weren't Koopas. They were called something else. But yes, they were. The Koopa design was based off of those turtles. That was the Mario Brothers arcade game. I actually went into a lot of the history of Mario while you were gone.
Okay, so you went over all those games already.
Yeah, I had to fill dead air.
Okay, well then never mind. And I want to tap into some other arcade games of the 80s, starting with Galaga.
I love that game. I think
same here.
I think everyone in the audience has played at least the plug and play of Galaga.
I have it on Game Boy, and I played a plug and play of it a few times. I've even played it at the actual arcades before.
So have I. It's one of the best games ever.
And
I don't just say that to be like a nostalgic hipster. I mean that as far as top-down shooters go, it was one of the first to actually innovate a new element. It was supposed to be Galaga is actually supposed to be a sequel to Galaxian, if I remember correctly. And I don't remember
the same logo design.
And I believe it was Galaga that introduced the stealing a ship gimmick.
Yes, that's actually my favorite part about that game is when you're shooting at the insects that are shooting at you, and you got a mothership that comes down and has a blue wave or green, depending on, you have to hit it. You hit it the first time and it turns blue. But if it steals your ship at blue, then if you shoot it down, it comes back. But if you shoot the ship at green after it's taken your ship, you won't get your ship back, if I remember correctly. That's right, right? Doesn't it have to be at blue for you to be able to get your ship back?
I don't remember.
Because either that way or reversed. But I do know that if you have to do it a specific way to get your ship back when you shoot down the ship. And then you do it the first time, you get double ships, which gives you double shooting. And you do it the second time, you get a bigger ship that does three lasers.
So you almost want to bait them.
Mm-hmm. The only disadvantage to having the bigger ship is it's much easier for the insect ships to crash into you.
That makes sense.
Yeah. But overall, Galaga is definitely a product of its time and definitely far ahead of its time in a way.
I would say it came out when it should have come out because the timing was just right. The timing was just right for it to become easily remembered.
Okay. I thought it more like just game innovation. I thought it was a little ahead of its time.
I think what it gave us was the next logical step to Space Invaders.
Okay. Didn't it have a sequel also?
Galaga?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay. That's what I'm thinking of. But speaking of space games, you got two others that are pretty good. How about Asteroids?
Asteroids was the bane of my friggin' cafe arcade existence. Okay, so when I lived in Ohio, there was a 50s joint, a 50s restaurant called Winks that had old arcade games in the back, which weren't 50s at all. Arcades didn't exist in the 50s. But, they had the actual vector graphics Asteroids game.
How far did you get with it?
Well, I was the only one who friggin' played the thing, so I have a high score of 200, which is worthless. It's difficult to get used to the physics for me because it wasn't a joystick; it was a ball.
That's funny.
You had to friggin' flick the ball, and it would go, and you'd have to friggin' hit the brakes on it and hope your ship stopped.
Oh yeah. That's yeah. But I've had a little trouble playing Asteroids, but I've learned one thing. If you're able to get a hang on the control panel to actually turn and move around to develop a strategy, it's pretty easy, and you do get a hang of it easily, eventually.
Yeah, I was a big fan of Centipede.
Yes. Now, what about Space Invaders?
Space Invaders I have played. You can't go wrong with it. Everyone's played it. I was a big fan of firing upwards through my own shield.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a difficult game. It's just a question of timing.
That is true. Now, here's one we absolutely have to bring up because it's the one everyone remembers when you think Atari. Pong.
Well, actually, Pong was pre-Atari.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wasn't it still the first Atari game, though?
Atari came packaged with a few games. One of them was Pong, but that was to show off the paddle controls.
Okay. But anyways, do you have any fond memories of Pong?
It was one of the first games a classmate of mine coded.
Ooh, okay.
They made a version of Pong. They made multiple versions of Pong, actually. They made Inverse Pong. They made Life Point Pong.
Yeah, there's really not much we can say on Pong other than bump, 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 bump,
It
bump,
never
bump.
ends. No one ever wins.
Yeah. Going on to racing, I think I know which game I'm gonna bring up now.
Oh, I know exactly which game you're going to bring up right now.
This one deserves a specific opening, though.
Go
Hey,
ahead.
El Chizo, you look like a jerk.
I don't know the commercial.
What are you doing today?
I never.
No, you're playing pole position.
Oh. No, I'm not. Not unless you're putting a freaking copy of it in my hand. This is not 80s commercial land. It's just not happening.
Okay, pole position. One of the most freaking hardest arcade games you'll ever play. Also had the coolest advertising campaign.
Yeah, I never saw the ad campaign, I gotta say.
You need to watch Nostalgia Critics review on commercials.
Oh, maybe I haven't. I missed it. But I just, when I watch the commercial videos, I turn my brain off and just enjoy it.
No, anyways, big thing about pole position. My God, is it so freaking hard just to qualify? I mean, you get around 120 seconds, and that's only if you're playing super easy with an extended time limit. And in order to qualify or even come close to qualifying, you have to have a perfect race, not slow down at all when you're going for qualifying for the race. And then when you get to the race part, you know how freaking easy it is just to crash into another Formula One car? That game required skill. Have you played pole position at all?
No.
You've never played pole position?
I don't have a copy of it.
Get an emulator. Actually, better yet,
I don't.
do you have a Game Boy?
Yeah.
Go online, get Namco Arcade, go from there.
Will do.
Okay, good. Now, I guess I can share my own experience with pole position, and since you need to get some. Other than the obvious that I've said, pole position is a really addicting game. No matter how often you lose, you still have that urge to drive forward to beat the time and move forward. I've spent at least 3 hours at the most trying to get through qualifying on pole position before I finally gave up for the day.
So it's a rage game, but it's a rage game that sucks you in.
Yes, very much so. But the thing is, you actually have to have a strategy developed, and you have to actually time everything right in order to actually proceed in the game. It isn't your racing game where the whole goal is to win. You're pretty much stuck on the time. You're fighting the time, and you're fighting obstacles that get in your way.
So it ain't no Gran Turismo.
No, not by a long shot. But Gran Turismo is my favorite modern racing game. Gran Turismo 3 specifically. But other than racing games or other classic racing games out there, there's not many others I can think of that were in the 80s era. Wasn't Super Mario, or wasn't Mario Kart early 90s?
Yeah, Super Mario Kart came out on the Super Nintendo.
Yes, in the early 90s, right?
Yes.
Right. So then, other than pole position, I really can't think of any other racing games that were memorable for the 80s time period. I know there was
Sonic
one that
Drift.
was that involved a dune buggy. I just can't remember the name of it. I was always because I was at a laundry when I was younger. My mom would go to the laundromat and I'd go with her, and she'd always give me like 50 cents to play on the that one arcade machine there, and it was pretty much a pole position knockoff, except instead of fighting the time, you were actually racing, but you had dune buggies instead of Formula One racers. Do you know the game?
Doesn't ring a bell.
Okay. Yeah, I can't remember it. I don't know. But it did have a steering wheel. I remember pole position. I don't think pole position had a steering wheel on its console.
I think it did.
All right. Well, I know there were a few versions of it. I know the one I played, you had a knob that you would go back there, this way, that way, type thing. But yeah, I think I had easier game memories with that one game I can't name, and I've had more rage urge to get past it memories with pole position.
I do recognize that it is recognized as one of the greats.
Definitely. Now here's one I'm sure everyone knows. Frogger.
Ah, Frogger. Such a simple concept, yet so infuriating at times. But when you get the hang of it, you get the hang of it. I own it in like 3 different ways. I own it in 3 different forms.
Have you played the original form, though?
I have. Actually, I played the original form in a pub when I was a kid. Beat it? No. Mostly because it was one of those awkward coffee table arcade machines.
Okay. How far did you get?
I got past 2 boards.
Okay, that's good. I think the best I've done in a Frogger game at all would have to be the one I had one for the Game Boy Advanced. I can't tell you. It was probably a remake of Frogger 2. Or it was the GBA version of Frogger 2. And it had like several levels you could go through.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of versions of Frogger, I've got a Game Boy Color version here somewhere.
Ooh, show me.
Hold on just a minute. I gotta find it. I got it. There it is. I don't know if the camera can pick that up.
Oh, yeah, I see it. You know what's funny, though? When people always think of Frogger, visually, that image you see on that cartridge is what comes up on everyone's head when they think of Frogger. When they think of the gameplay, they think of the Atari version.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, because that's the PS1 version of Frogger, isn't it? In terms of, like, design logo? Wasn't it, like, the late 90s Frogger?
There was a 3D Frogger, a Frogger World, I think it was called, that was released on PC.
Okay. But yeah, that's like the modern Frogger look right there. Or like the...
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, Frogger 3D on the Wii, on the Wii store.
Mm-hmm.
The Wii shop, sorry. Was very much in that visual style.
But moving on to next games, I'm going to whistle it out, and I think you might guess it just because it's such an iconic tune for it.
Everyone loves Tetris.
Yep.
There was a weird legal battle over that game.
Really? Can you bring it up? I'd like to hear this. I'm sure to get.
I don't know all the details exactly, so don't take my word as law. But essentially, there was a guy creating computer games for sale. Was technically the original game of Tetris was owned by the Russian government because it was produced because the guy who invented it made it on his spare time that was still technically work time. They had this allotted amount of space before the end of the day where you could just dick around on the computer, and he created Tetris. And so this guy found it in America, or this guy in Japan found it. He loved it, and I think he started licensing it out to no, it was an American man who licensed it out to a bunch of different video game companies before he actually confirmed the purchase of the game from this guy. And by the time he actually talked with the man, he's like, I never sold this game to anyone. They were like, yeah, but there's this long list of people that own the licenses after you sold to this one guy. And there was this whole legal battle. And ultimately they were like, okay, we'll let everyone in on this, but we need to get more money from it. And ultimately it ended up serving them better in the end.
Okay.
But yeah, it was sketchy there for a while.
Wow. Now, how far do you get in Tetris before it starts going rapid crazy?
Oh, it actually gets progressively quicker and quicker over time.
Okay, because I've never made it that far in Tetris. I mean, I've always enjoyed playing it, but there's a certain
point
in the game where I just lose my focus.
You gotta find the zone.
Okay.
When you find that pocket, when you find that zone, then Tetris is just zen, man.
Mm-hmm. Tetris is like going to war. Starts off smooth and fine, then it goes right when you hit it.
I find the curve to be quite easy to adapt to.
I need to see you play this then, because I go down real quick. I don't even make it to that point.
Yeah, I just like I said, it's just a matter of going with it. Mm-hmm. You got to know what combinations of blocks go nice together. You got to watch which block is coming up.
Ooh, fun fact. Did you know that in Super Smash Bros. Brawl, the L block from Tetris was considered as a playable character?
I'm glad they didn't do that.
It was rejected. Why?
Well, there's really not much depth you can pull from.
Well, the way when they said they rejected it, the way they put it is the L block is good at falling down but not getting back up.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And that's all it can do. I mean, Mr. Game & Watch had more usable features just as a franchise than the L block.
That's another 80s arcade game, isn't it?
No. The Game & Watch games were Liquid Crystal Display games released by Nintendo that had a built-in watch and a game.
They're still 80s though, right?
Yeah, they were 80s. They came out before the original Game Boy.
Would you like to briefly go over Game & Watch?
There's really not much to say. There were a bunch of each Game & Watch game that you got was its own self-contained unit. It had one game on it. You couldn't change them out. It had very specific controls to that game, and it had a watch function.
So it's kind of like those little portable.
That's exactly what it is.
Those games kind of like football or soccer.
Exactly. Although, well, they were Liquid Crystal Display, not LED.
Okay.
I've got a good example of one around here somewhere. Might have to get it later. Oh no, wait, here it is. So this is not a Liquid Crystal Display thing. This actually the original version of this came out in the 70s. Mattel Electronic Football.
Ooh. Does it work?
Oh yeah, it works. Let me turn the sound off though. The camera can't pick it up so well, but maybe if I turn the light off for a second.
Oh, I see it.
So your goal is that you're the brighter light essentially, and your job is, well, you're the running back. You try not to get tackled and get the ball into the end zone, which they don't have enough space for So you have to cross a certain number of screens.
Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. That actually reminds me. Do you remember McDonald's released a big set of those?
Oh yeah, they had some for sports. They had a couple of Tony Hawk ones. They did one for Sonic.
They did Crash Bandicoot and Spyro.
Yep, I've got one of the Crash Bandicoot ones too.
I had a Spyro one that was like first person, or it was like it was sort of 3D. You basically walk through a dungeon. It would fireball at monsters type of maze thing.
But yeah, that's like Game & Watch was essentially one of those with a watch and an alarm built in.
Mm-hmm. Now let's go into open discussion because we've got about 15 more minutes left.
I don't really have anything more to add.
What about we could go into how it's affected our modern culture of gaming in general.
Well, I think that's going to be tricky because what gaming has become is so far flung from previous games that if a game is made in the style of the old games, it's usually either for a nostalgia kick or as a satire or as sort of a device to say, hey, this is meant to feel old.
Like, I'll give you a good example. Undertale. You ever seen gameplay of Undertale?
I have, and it's one of those games that does the pixelated thing for two reasons. One, because it's easy, and two, because it's easier than doing 3D modeling.
Mm-hmm.
And two, it definitely triggers the nostalgia factor because that was actually supposed to be, I believe, like the Earthbound series.
Mm-hmm.
So it was referencing the old game, yes, but ultimately, I think Undertale is going to be one of a kind for a while. We're very slowly going to start getting back into games that are games in exercise. They're not just slightly interactive movies.
Right. What about a game? Have you ever heard of a game called Dwarf Fortress?
Dwarf Fortress, I know of it. I do not know much about it.
Basically, it's just one of these games that's it's still in development. I mean, it's playable, but it's still in development. The development of it started like in the 90s, early 2000s. And basically how it works is it's a computer game. What you do is all the characters are represented by either letters, compute stuff on or images on your keypad that you type in. And what you do is you set up your fortress, your home and everything. And you have to remember which characters are which based on the coding and their symbol. Like, for example, a dwarf would be like a P. I don't remember if that's exactly what it was, but that's just an example. And how it works is you get really creative with it, and you get other people that like attack your village, and you have to defend it, stuff like that. Very complex though, because of the amount of characters you have to remember represent what.
I could see that. It's just a tower defense game then?
Yes, pretty much.
I rarely see those going wrong. It's pretty simple gameplay, a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Think of it as a digital tabletop.
It's pretty much what most tower defense games are.
Yeah. Aspects of D&D in a way.
Less of the dice rolling, but more of the, points where they count.
Right. Definitely.
I think that's going to have to be it because I don't really have anything more to add to the conversation.
I don't have any more to add either.
Well, I guess that's what we'll do for the night then. Thank you all for watching.
Yeah, thank you. Remember, going back to some of our older videos if you want. Follow us on Twitter at weekend_dojo. go to our channels, which are linked in the description. And thank you all, and come back next week. We also, Chaz will be uploading videos on guitar-related stuff, and then I will be uploading
very soon.
Yeah, and I will be uploading videos for a new segment I'm calling Behind the Mascot, where I break down the history of cultural or mascots that are cultural icons, such as like Pepsi Man, Kool-Aid Man, and just characters like
Raisins?
That. Huh?
California Raisins?
Yes, I will be doing that too. First one I will be covering is the McDonald's mascot from the 80s called Mac Tonight.
Demon Chin. Demon Chin.
Is that what you call him?
He could poke your eye out with his chin.
So, thank you all for watching, and until next Saturday.
We'll see you later, Weekend Warriors.